My story begins in November 2022. I was wearing my Made in PortHarcourt t-shirt, and I was traveling to India for a meeting. Now, this trip coincided with the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. And we had a layover at the Hamad International Airport in Doha. Now, prior to this time, I've heard so much about Qatar, right? But the things I saw at the airport left me quite baffled. They had a driverless tram that took people from one terminal to the other. They had a tropical garden in the airport that had over 300 trees and 25,000 plants. And I was really stunned by this because if you put Qatar and Rivers State side by side, we're not so different as people might think. I know Qatar is a country and Rivers State is a state, obviously, but we have around the same landmass of around 11,000 square kilometers. Rivers State has more human capital with about 9 million people compared to Qatar's 2.7 million. We both have oil and gas, and Qatar is in the Arabian Gulf with zero potable water and zero arable land. So the question I asked myself is, how were they able to transform themselves from this desert into what I could see? And this question drove me to research further. And I found that one thing was central to great nations, great states, and great regions. And it is a powerful vision and a stubborn will to see that vision come to pass. The UAE has a 100-year plan from 1971 to 2071. Qatar has a national vision that was launched in 2008. Rwanda has a 2050 vision to transform Kigali into one of Africa's modern hubs. Even Lagos State has a 30-year plan from 2022 to 2052. At home here in Rivers State, the last time we had a vision or a long-term vision was 50 years ago in 1975. Our first military governor, Commander Alfred Dieter-Spieth, put together this vision in 1975, just after the Civil War, to help build the foundation for the states moving forward. That vision led to Point Block, which is our secretariat building, which is still standing 50 years on. Several other companies like Pabod Breweries, the West Africa Glass Company, Reason Palm, to mention a few. So this means for over 50 years, as a state, as a people, we stopped thinking and dreaming. Why? I sought to answer this question this year. And so in February 2025, I launched something called the Rivers 2050 Vision. I've convened over 100 young people from across the 23 local government areas of Rivers State. We've convened young people from Rivers State who are based in Nigeria and the diaspora. We've convened experts across 15 thematic areas. We've engaged international partners. We've engaged state leaders, former governors, traditional rulers, etc., to come together and craft a 25-year development vision for Rivers State. All of the information we're gathering from our surveys, our key informant interviews, all our conversations will go into the Rivers 2050 Vision book, which will be launched next year. It will be the first of its kind in Africa, the first citizen-led vision for a state, and we're looking at it as a citizen manifesto for the future. Our previous speaker just spoke about the future being something you build. So we're looking at it as something citizens can use to create the future that we want to see. So I encourage you to visit rivers2050.org to learn more about how you can join us on this campaign. Now, in the course of our work so far, we've plotted a timeline of the next 25 years, and we've looked at predictions from various data sources, right, that speak about what will happen between now and the year 2050. And we found 5 threats to our collective existence as a state. And I'll be sharing with us quickly some ideas on how we can address these 5 threats really, really quickly. The first threat is that 2028 would see the rise of renewable energy. The International Energy Association has said that by 2028, solar, for the first time, would overtake coal as one of the biggest energy sources in the world. Now, Rivers State currently is plugged into the national grid, which collapsed how many times last year? 12 times, right? Despite that, we have rivers in Bonny, we have ocean breeze that comes through our coastal communities. And like our last speaker said, there's so much potential for renewable and clean energy here in Rivers State. And so for us to be able to prepare for this, 3 things that we have to do and think about quickly. We must think about how we can come up with a power sector plan. The Electricity Act being signed, as Prof said earlier, has given us the power as states to generate electricity. We were actually a leader in this a couple of years ago when our state developed gas turbines some decades ago, but we let that to rot and decay. We have to go back to all of that and get it working again, because as a state, we cannot continue to rely on the national grid. We must also, as a state, continue to invest in renewable energy, various forms of renewable energy, and use gas as a way to transition out of our current way of energy. The second prediction is that for us to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, right? The Tyndale Climate Change Center has found that we have global nations who are oil producers who have to transit from oil by the year 2034. That is just 9 years' time. In 9 years' time, we'd have to transit from oil. And being a major hydrocarbon economy, oil is the major source of revenue for us as a state. So the question is, in 9 years' time, if we transit from oil, what would our states be using to survive? The photo you see there is of an oil wellhead in Oloibiri, right? A place, we were talking about Oloibiri earlier, the place where oil was found for the first time in commercial quantity. 50 plus years after, that community still looks deserted, and community members are still living in poverty, despite having this same oil that everyone has been speaking about. So this can be our fate too as a state if we don't, focus on diversifying our economy, especially within the next 9 years. We have a very short window to do this. And that's why a few things we need to do. We need to think about agriculture as a major industry to be able to do this. We need to look at things like culture and tourism, technology, entertainment as sectors where currently Rivers State exports talents to other parts of Nigeria. So we need to make sure that we're able to build on these talents that we have and grow as a state and build our local economy. The third prediction, projections by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics have shown that with our current growth and birth rates, 4 million extra people will be added to Rivers State over the next 10 years. Our current population is around 9 million people. By 2035, we'll be 13.8 million people, if nothing is done. Now, the picture you see on the screen is from Christmas Day in 2016, when we had only one mall in the city. There was so much crowd that day that it took hours for people to move from just inside the mall to outside the mall. And we're not so far away from this again if we have 400,000 people being added to our population every year for the next 10 years. A few things we need to do. We need to incentivize family planning as a state. We need to also consider projects like the Greater Port Harcourt project and other projects that consider places like Omok, Elele, Buguma, Bori, Bonny as satellite towns that can help decongest Port Harcourt City. We also need to domesticate the national population policy because that's very key in how we manage our growth. Now, the fourth prediction, because of our time, by 2040, and Mr. Alabo George mentioned this earlier, by 2040, NASA has said that sea levels will rise to 16 centimeters. The photo you see on the screen is from Ahuda West local government area during the 2022 flood. Our coastal communities are at risk of being washed away by a global disaster if we don't plan to do something about it. And so a few things you can think about. We need to explore natural flood buffers like mangroves, build dikes. We need to even consider how we build on water. I mean, most of our communities that we used to have before used to build entire settlements on water. So our architecture needs to evolve to the point where we're able to build on water and survive. We also need to start thinking about how we invest in flood control, ensuring that building permits are being adhered to. People, even within this GRA, are beginning to build on natural waterways. We must ensure as a people that we hold them accountable, because tomorrow, that water will find its way into our various houses. Now, the final prediction. So the photo you see is of my son, who is somewhere there in the audience, looking at the Rivers 2050 design. He was born last year, and children like him, born last year and this year, will start to work in the year 2041. That's after going through 16 years of basic, secondary, and tertiary education. They'll be working at a time when Goldman Sachs, that's a US investment agency, has said that 50% of jobs will be fully automated. And that's a time when artificial intelligence would reign supreme and take over the entire job market. So the question is, what can we teach them now and prepare them for that world that we cannot see? We need to prioritize education investment. There was a time when Rivers State had the best secondary and primary schools in this country. But for sad political reasons, those schools have been led to decay for a very long time. We need to ensure that we support teacher training and retraining. We need to evolve our curriculum. I mean, the national curriculum now is evolved. As a state, we need to ensure that we're able to tap into that and prepare our workforce to be able to fit into that. We need to invest in digital infrastructure that ensures that internet, connectivity, power, and all of that is available for us and for our children to be able to connect with the rest of the world easily. Now, in closing, I'm sure after hearing these ideas, you'll be like, good ideas, but how do we pay for all of this? So what you see on the screen is additional income received by Rivers State between 2009 and 2019. And this income came from something called the 13% derivation fund. The total amount adds up to 1.05 trillion naira. If you convert that to dollars, it's $2.7 billion. $2.7 billion. Does Rivers State look like a state where $2.76 billion has been spent solving social problems? Let me help you answer the question better. You have the Aba geometric power plant, which cost about 800 million. It was commissioned last year. It runs on gas and generates up to 188 megawatts of electricity. You have the Lagos Blue Line, right, which is about half of Lagos State's current metro system. It cost about 1.2 billion if you add corruption and add everything, $1.2 billion. It goes a distance of about 13 kilometers and reduces transportation costs by 50%. You also have this Kanu tomato plant, which was commissioned by Dangote Farms last year. Cost about $20 million. It helps to reduce tomato waste across our value chain, ensuring that we can create tomato paste easier and reduce our tomato paste imports. $20 million, which that tomato plant costs, is less than 5% of the total amount that Rivers State received in just 11 years. I'm not talking about 2000 to 2025, I'm just saying 11 years. $2 billion. So I'll ask the question one more time, and I hope you can help me ask your neighbor. Dear Rivers State, where is our $2 billion? What have we spent it on? Thank you.